I often see a lot of hikers using trekking poles incorrectly, which causes two major problems. The first one is that they aren't used efficiently, and the second problem can even lead to injuries. But before I explain these mistakes, let's go over 6 benefits of trekking poles and why you might want to use them in the first place. First of all, they give you much more stability, which is super useful if you're walking on mud, snow, or other difficult terrains. This also highly reduces the chances of you falling and spraining your ankle. They also help you walk faster because with each step they push you a bit forward, especially when you're walking uphill. If used correctly, trekking poles also distribute some of the weight over from your legs and your back over to your arms, which means that you'll be able to walk longer. They also add a bit of a workout to your arms, especially your wrists and your triceps, which means that you aren't moving just your legs anymore. But I think the main benefit of trekking poles and why everyone pretty much uses them is that they reduce some of the load from your knees, which means that you're much less likely to get an injury and that you'll still be able to keep hiking even when you're 60 or 70. And lastly, they can also be used to protect yourself from animals or something else, and you can also save a bit of weight if you own a trekking pole tent. The first mistake that I see a lot of people making is that they put their hand in through the strap from the top and then they grip the trekking pole like this. The problem with this is that if you fall, and you eventually will, the trekking pole will not release properly. If you fall with your hands first, your thumb might get trapped here between the pole and the strap and it might get dislocated or even broken. The correct way is to go in from the bottom. It doesn't matter if you go from the left or from the right side, as long as you go in from the bottom and then grip over the strap like this. If you fall, the trekking pole will quickly release and nothing will get caught in the way. You should also adjust the length of the strap so that when you put your hand through and balance it like this, your fingers grip the trekking pole perfectly and comfortably. It also helps with balancing some of the weight over to the strap instead of just your fingers. If you're walking on flat terrain or uphill, you should grip the trekking pole like this. But if you're walking downhill, you should grip it over here from the top like this, kind of pushing against the trekking pole. If you want to travel to cool places like these, for example, right now I'm in central Italy, you'll probably need to travel and buy a local SIM when you get there if you want to keep using the internet on your phone. And that's where today's sponsor comes in, Saily. They offer affordable internet plans for over 150 different countries across the world through an eSIM. This means that you can set it all up digitally without going to local stores and looking for affordable physical SIM cards. Simply download the Saily app on your Apple or Android device and select one of the plans for the country that you'll be traveling to. Then set up the eSIM and activate the plan just before your plane departs, and when you land you'll have a working internet connection. For me, this all took just 3 minutes to set up. No more overpaying for local SIM cards at the airport or falling for local scams with fake SIM cards. So go ahead and support this channel by signing up to Saily using the link in the video description. They also offer 24/7 support in case you have any troubles, and they'll also give you a full refund if the eSIM technology doesn't work on your phone. To sign up, go to saily.com/OscarHikes. Thank you, Saily, for sponsoring this video, but now let's get back to the rest of the video. When hiking, I see a lot of people placing the trekking poles somewhat awkwardly. Either they're putting them too far in front of them like this, or when they're hiking, they're placing them too wide from each other. But that shouldn't be the case, because when you're walking on flat terrain or uphill, ideally you should place the trekking poles roughly at your shoulder width, and instead of placing the trekking pole next to your foot, you should place it behind it so that with each step you have something to push yourself forward with. I think a lot of people also struggle with their downhill technique. First of all, you should always lead with the trekking pole first and only then move your foot once you've established that there's a good connection to the ground, because otherwise the trekking pole might slip, you might lose your balance, and you might sprain your ankle. Essentially, there are two main techniques that you can use when going downhill. For trails that aren't that steep, for example, this trail over here, you can place the trekking pole opposite to your active feet in front of it, something like this, always having 2 or 3 contacts to the ground. But for more steep, rocky or slippery downhill sections, I would advise you to use the second technique, and that is to place both trekking poles widely down in front of you, then move and do it again and again, because this is much more stable and you're much less likely to sprain your ankle. I often see a lot of hikers that have trekking poles that are too short or too long for them. Ideally, the trekking pole should form a 90-degree angle when you place it like this in front of you. But the problem with this is that if you're going downhill, the trekking pole needs to be longer to account for this, or if you're going uphill, the trekking pole needs to be shorter. Personally, I keep the trekking pole adjusted so that it forms a 90-degree angle when I'm walking on flat terrains for like 90% of the time. But if I see a very long and steep uphill or downhill section, I'll usually readjust the trekking pole slightly shorter or longer. When a lot of people start using trekking poles for the first time, I see them making one big mistake. It's that they're using the trekking pole right next to their active foot, something like this. But that shouldn't be the case if you're walking on flat terrain or uphill. You should always use the trekking pole opposite to your active foot, because this adds more stability to the other end of your active foot and just makes you a bit more stable overall. I see a lot of people that always keep on the rubber cap and the basket on the tip of the trekking pole, but you definitely shouldn't do that. You should only keep the rubber caps on if you're walking on paved roads a lot, and you should keep the baskets on if you're walking through mud or snow. The clear carbide tip that I have over here is much better for hiking on gravel, rocks, or if you're hiking through forests and it isn't really that muddy outside, because it digs into the ground and it provides a much better traction. I hope you learned something in this quick guide on trekking poles. If you did, subscribe, and I'll see you in one of my next videos. Bye!